I had an experience with a patient today that makes me want to talk about medical hexing or medical hypnosis, which is this concept where the words that a medical practitioner uses in an interaction with a patient or a client can really unintentionally or sometimes intentionally induce a placebo, which is a good response, or a nocebo, which is a negative response that's mediated by the mind. So there's no other physical cause for it, but the mind causes it to happen. So placebo and nocebo. And the words that we use when we talk to patients and clients, or whenever there's a healing encounter, if somebody is putting their health or their trust in you and they really defer to you as the authority figure, and you're really like helping them, or they think you're helping them, then your words will be received by them in such a way that it could impact their life in a way that you didn't really intend. And this has happened to me with a patient where I think I've medically hexed the patient. I've seen cases where it's happened with other practitioners as well. And of course, this is all anecdotal. There's no real way to measure this. So if you're looking for a randomized control study on medical hexing, then this is not the place that you're going to find that. But I kind of want to touch briefly on what happened with a patient that I had today that got me thinking about a patient that I had this week that got me thinking about medical hexing and just how powerful and sometimes unintentional it can be. I had a patient today who just refused to stop taking a medication that she was put on by a doctor 30 years ago because that doctor told her that if she stops taking it, her heart will start to race. And they have tried to half the dose, and that's exactly what happened. Their heart would start to race, and there is no other physical or medical cause that has been found for this heart racing. So she's just been on this medication long before it was actually we now have guidelines on medications for people with high blood pressure, and that type of medication is no longer one of the first or even the second line meds. So there really is no indication for her to be on it. But she really believes that she must be on it because this doctor in the 90s said that she has to stay on it or else her heart will start to race. So based on the conviction that this patient had when she was talking to me, I just knew that I just wouldn't touch it. I would not touch it because of she had such strong religious and cultural belief that I knew that anything that I did to disrupt that might cause a nocebo effect in that patient. So I was like, hands off, let me leave that alone. And I do have an example of unintentionally causing a nocebo effect in a patient. This is an anecdote, obviously. I was trying to warn a patient about some of the complications of diabetes, and I used very specific wording that would help him to understand how diabetes could affect him in his life based on the type of work that he did. I gave him an example. And, I noticed when I was giving the patient the example, he was really like, it made him pause, and he really stopped, and he was like, Doc, you really saying the truth? Like, he really believed what I said. I saw him this week, and exactly what I said to him as an example of what I didn't want to happen to him is exactly what happened. And I didn't even make the connection. He did. He came back and said, but he's much better now, by the way. But he came back and said that, oh yeah, by the way, what you said to me, that's exactly what happened. Exactly as you said. And I can't get into the details of it because it would just be too much information that I'm sharing about the patient. But that really got me thinking that I didn't intend for this complication to happen to the patient. I was just trying to be like, hey, maybe we should get this disease under control so that this doesn't happen. But what his subconscious mind and even his conscious mind like really took from that like pep talk I gave to him was that, oh, if you don't control XYZ, then ABC will happen. And ABC happened. Now, is it coincidence? Maybe. But having learned about medical hexing, medical hypnosis in my integrative medicine fellowship program with the University of Arizona, I know, I'm aware of, and I accept and believe that the words that we use and the way that we use them can really have an effect on people. I believe the mind to be very powerful. I've seen this for myself and I see it for others as well. So I would be a fool to just willy-nilly use my words as a curse instead of as a blessing. Now I want to share this book with you. I have not finished reading it. Like I'm not even, bro, I'm at page 40. It's called Healing Beyond Pills and Potions, written by Dr. Steve Bierman. He gave a lecture in my program in integrative medicine, and it was about medical hypnosis. And this book is a bunch of anecdotes from his practice in emergency medicine. And I'm not sure if it goes into the experience of other doctors who have tried these methods, but he goes into experiences where he's spoken in a specific way to patients and it has helped to control something in the emergency room like bleeding or even long-term chronic illnesses, to stall them or prevent them from getting worse or help with reversal. I haven't gotten that far in the book. I'm only at the part where he's using it in the emergency room and I'm like, wow, that's remarkable. What do you mean you can just give a hypnotic suggestion to someone and they'll stop bleeding because your ER is full and you're dealing with other emergencies and you can't stop to suture a laceration right now? Like, what do you mean you used hypnosis to do that? I mean, as he gave us this lecture, I was thinking, yeah, you're a white man. Maybe that just makes the hypnosis thing work so much better for you, because I think in the US there's this whole concept of a white male being a doctor and they're an authority figure and they're well trusted. So I think he has an edge there where he was just like really talented and really gifted at hypnotizing and hexing patients essentially. But I do think it's something that everyone can learn, especially because we're all doing it unintentionally anyways. That doctor who saw my patient from 30 years ago, who told her she can't stop taking this medication because her heart will race, I don't think he knew the implication of that. I don't think he knew just how deeply the patient would hold on to that and believe that and have it as this very strong belief in her mind, where there is a real possibility of, if we go against what he said to her and what the belief he instilled in her, it might cause an unwanted effect. Like maybe she'll have palpitations, or maybe something more serious will happen. Maybe just palpitations. I don't know. But I didn't want to find out. I didn't want to find out because I realized just how deep that belief was. So, and these are just two examples, but I'm sure if you're a clinician, or even if you're a patient or a client or a family member, you know of cases where a doctor or a clinician of some form has said something to you or your relative or your friend and it has happened. So I think because we don't really recognize this a lot in medicine, because you can't measure it. There is no real way to measure the placebo response or measure the nocebo response. And yeah, there really is no real way to measure it. In fact, I would argue that even when someone comes in to visit you and you tell them that a medication will work with them, just the way you present it to them and how much they trust you, that can impact. This is not my opinion, by the way, this is just true. That can impact how well the medications work. I've had patients come to me because they didn't trust a doctor. They didn't like the medication that was prescribed and they had a bad effect from it, a side effect. Nothing wrong with the medication. They just didn't trust who was giving it to them. And that lack of clinician trust caused a nocebo response in the patient. And so then if you're the clinician seeing them afterwards, you have to kind of build that trust back, understand the implications of trust and the words that you use. And then you try to shift things in hopefully onto the positive side. But I think I lost my train of thought. And what I initially wanted to say was that the placebo effect, which is the mind inducing a positive effect on the body, plays a bigger role in our clinical medicine than we even know. So when somebody has good response to a medication, some of it is the actual mechanism of action of the medication, and some is because of the therapeutic relationship that you have with the patient. So knowing that, you have to really leverage that. You really have to know that, okay, this person should trust me. There should be a therapeutic relationship here. They should leave my office feeling better. And just that could, not in everybody, could make the medication work better. And this is not to say that it's your fault if a person has side effects, or if the glory belongs to you if something you said or did helped them. It just means that if it can help or if it can harm, why not pay attention to it? Why not pay attention to it and do things differently? Let me just catch my train of thoughts again. I was going somewhere. And I lost it. Placebo and nocebo and medical hypnosis. So medical hexing, are you doing it? Yes, you are. Unintentionally, yes, you are. But wouldn't it be cool to do that intentionally? Not because you want to manipulate a patient, but because you want to have the best outcome for them. And because you know that as humans, we're dealing with humans where we are all connected, like more than we can actually see and tell. We are communicating with each other with more than just words. It's not just words, it's body language, it's our nervous systems attuning to each other. There is significant therapeutic potential there. And if you're a clinician or if you're in any healing profession, this is something that you must be attuned to, you must be paying attention to. And yeah, I'm really passionate about that. It's not easy to pay attention to that all the time. And I will say a lot of good clinicians are naturally like that. I'm saying we, not me involving myself, but a lot of good clinicians naturally have a therapeutic presence, like healing presence. If somebody comes to you, you might just be doing your job in the way that you do it. You're not doing anything extra, and they'll leave and tell you, wow, I feel better. Because often they want to feel listened to. And if you're genuinely doing that at baseline, then that creates this incredible therapeutic relationship. It requires more than just that, but that's a very good baseline. Now, I'm not saying if you say something to a patient, it will happen, whether good or bad, because there's other things to consider. There's the patient's religious beliefs or cultural beliefs. Culturally, if they trust medicine, if they trust pharmacology, if they trust doctors, if they believe that God is their healer, if they believe that God has sent a sickness for them, if they believe that God will take a sickness away from them. You're also dealing with their trauma, if they have family trauma, if they have financial troubles. All of this will impact your therapeutic intervention. So it's not just what you say and how you say it. So I'm not saying this to say, okay, it's your fault if a patient has a poor outcome, or as I said earlier, you deserve the glory if you said something and the patient accepted the suggestion so much that something great happened. Like, we're not God here, okay? Don't play God. Don't let ego get in the way, but just know that what you say to a patient can really, really impact their life. So try to pay attention to what you say and how you say it, because their subconscious is always listening. Their subconscious mind is always listening. And in my case, even though I said to the patient, oh, I don't want you getting XYZ and then not being able to ABC, blah, blah, blah. Even though I said that to him and he agreed with me, it would appear as if what his subconscious mind really held on to was what I said, and not that I said, I don't want that to happen. So this is something that we have to bear in mind when we're talking to patients about risks and complications of diseases, risks of procedures. We have to be very careful. And there's ways that you can talk to a patient to essentially help to reduce the risk of side effects, reduce the risk of complications. And it goes back to that same nervous system attunement. Like when a patient comes in, you attune to their body, you give them eye contact, you face them, and you start to mirror their body language to build rapport so that they really feel like you're in tune and connected with them, to establish trust at the beginning of the consultation. And if you're going on to talk about a procedure or a medication, but you have to give informed consent, when you're giving informed consent, I think this is something that's in this book and that I've also learned in a lecture from this same Dr. Steve Bierman, as well as someone else. I really am blanking on their name. I'm like, I have to check my class schedule to really get their name, because I don't like just repeating people's concepts without saying where it's from, because this is not from me. This is what I've learned in my fellowship. So I need to go check that so I can reference it. But the whole concept of giving informed consent to a patient, as clinicians, we love to tell them what can go wrong. But sometimes just in telling them what can go wrong, if the patient really gets scared of, let's say, surgery or another more minor procedure or a medication, if you tell them what can go wrong when they do that procedure or take that medication, and they really accept that into their subconscious mind, they might be more likely to experience that side effect or that complication. So some simple techniques to use when you're telling a patient, giving them informed consent. If you're saying something that's more unpleasant, more of a, what's the word? A side effect that you don't want, a bad effect. When you're attuned to them and you've already built trust and rapport, when you tell them about the negative side effects, you can say, some people have this, and you use your hand to like gesture away from them, and this is hypnotic. And then you can say, but others, like maybe you, and then you tell them about the good effects. You might not experience anything at all, or might experience this pleasant, resolution of symptoms. And it's through choosing to communicate in a way that it's not that it lessens the bad side effects, because you still communicate it effectively to the patient, but you suggest to them subtly that maybe they won't have that side effect, or maybe it won't be as bad for them. Maybe you don't want to say bad. I don't know. I'm not an expert at this. I'm just learning, okay? I'm just learning as I go and realizing, wow, maybe I do be hexing these patients unintentionally. Like I just want to help prevent complications of their diabetes. And by saying exactly what I didn't want to happen, exactly as I said it, how I said it, for the duration of time that I said it, is what happened to the patient. Like, I don't want to be doing that. And it's not my fault or anything, but it's something to be aware of, to then know, how can I communicate differently? How can I alleviate the burden of like negative side effects? Because a big part of medicine is this placebo and nocebo effect. We love to ignore it. We love our randomized control trials with pharmacology, with medications, but this inexplicable part of the equation, the placebo and the nocebo effect, we're just like, okay, placebo, that means we can't measure it, doesn't matter. Only what we can measure is significant. That's an interesting take. To me, that's a very interesting take, because I am seeing in real life where, in my experience, and also I've seen where other clinicians have said things to people and it has induced a real nocebo phenomenon. And as I was mentioning earlier, I'm willing to bet that a lot of the times we're also inducing a real placebo phenomenon, but it's harder to attribute the things that you say and you do to placebo because you're already doing other interventions, like giving them medications or performing a procedure. So maybe it's just a procedure that worked. But it's hard to measure what the placebo is when you're doing an actual intervention. But nocebo kind of stands out a little bit more. Like if you tell somebody they're going to die in 3 days and they die in 3 days, like who knows when somebody's going to die? Like how can you tell someone exactly when they're going to die? You can't. So that would be an example of a nocebo response. So knowing that there's such great power in words, and not just words, but the way you attune to someone and how you share those words. And of course, their cultural beliefs and background and whatnot. You can't control that, but you can control your words. You can control how you attune to a patient and the words you say to them. So why not use those words intentionally to help induce a placebo or a helpful or a favorable response? And that is my talk for today.